Hello and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we are going to be taking a look at a Minecraft movie. And I gotta tell you, it's a bit of a mind fuck because we're trying to figure out what to make of this movie. But before we dive in, yeah, it took me quite a while to come up with that joke, by the way.
That was a good one, though. That was a good one. That's a good opening.
I appreciate that. But if you're enjoying the content that we're putting out, remember to hit the like button. It helps with the algorithm. And consider subscribing, because the more people subscribing, the bigger our audience will grow and the more videos can get out there to everybody else, both here in the US and around the world. Because I'm sure there are people in India and Australia, well, maybe not China because there's a tariff going on, but everywhere around the world, I'm sure a lot of people want to hear what Lee Suchek, the movie pope, thinks of all these movies and TV shows.
Absolutely.
So Lee, before we dive in, what exactly made you decide that this was a movie you wanted to take a look at?
I mean, honestly, it was just like a lack of options after a while. I couldn't quite figure out.
Because I distinctly remember we decided to settle on Prey, and then midway of the week, you're like, hey, let's take a look at Minecraft. And me being the producer just said, all right, just let me know, and I'll start pulling out the clips.
You should have talked me off that ledge, Luka, because after watching this, I watched it twice, right? So I watched it originally just a few days ago. So I've watched it like twice in the past 72 hours. And I felt like after a while I was just kind of losing my mind, because like the first time I watched it, I was like, oh God, this was so scatterbrained. I don't even know what was really happening. And then I watched it a second time and I started paying closer attention. I realized, God, this is really scatterbrained, and I just have a little bit more to talk about. So it was bizarre, right? And I guess we can kind of start talking about it. Now, I will say, right, so tell me about your knowledge about Minecraft.
Well, my knowledge of Minecraft comes from that South Park episode, Informative Murder Porn, where they're asking, how do you tame a horse in Minecraft? Like, and the way I see it, it's more of a, I'm gonna sound like an old man, but you know, we've been sounding like that for 2 years now. So what difference does it make? Minecraft is more of a Gen Z kind of thing. That's what I'm coming to learn, right? And this is me going to be philosophical here for a second, so bear with me. So I watched the movie Battleship probably about a week ago or so. You know, the movie starring Liam Neeson.
Why?
I wish I had an answer for that. And we did a review of Borderlands last year, so check that out. That was part of our Veterans Day special, and it occurred to me that a lot of the movies that are based on games, whether board games or video games, you know, depending on what the game is, they kind of speak to the generation that best enjoyed it. So a movie like Battleship, for instance, is very much kind of speaking to the Gen Xers, right? The kids who grew up in the 70s and 80s, who pretty much, they didn't have access to, to video games like the younger generations would have, right? So most of their, entertainment came from playing board games. And when it came to movies like Battleship, it was very much in line with the Gen X, narrative of the hot guy who's a renegade who doesn't listen to anybody, but he's really smart and good at what he does. He gets on the nerves of the older crusty boomer superior who's like you're never going to amount to anything, but by the end of the movie he comes to respect the young maverick, because even though his methods are unorthodox, he still finds a new way of doing things. Oh, and by the way, there's always the hot blonde who, falls for him, and they get together at the end of the movie. That's very much a Gen X way of looking at things, right? Now with a movie like Borderlands is more of a millennial kind of thing, because with millennials, or I should say with our age group, right? It's very much focused on the friend group kind of scenario, right? So, and I'm saying friend in the loosest sense, where it's just a bunch of these guys who like come together and they end up having to learn how to work together and create, and over time they realize that they've bonded and they've become a sort of surrogate family as a result. A good example of that, you could look at shows like New Girl, for instance, or Girls with Lena Dunham, where characters from all different backgrounds and all different places kind of come together and they learn to kind of cooperate and live and work together. So
I will trust your opinion on those. So yes,
right. So Borderlands, Borderlands, pretty much leans into the whole millennial ethos of what it means to develop characters and to build and the ethos and what it means to tell a story. Not to mention too that Borderlands is very much a millennial game because our generation kind of grew up where video games were quickly becoming accessible to everybody, right? Every house, my God, every household had either a Sega Genesis or a Nintendo 64 or as you got older, an Xbox or a PlayStation, right? So our entertainment was very much derived from just sitting in front of the TV and just playing these games for hours and hours, and later on, sitting in front of a computer and playing them. Minecraft is both as a game and as a movie, kind of speaks to the Gen Z mindset, which I'll be honest with you, I still can't figure out what Gen Z is all about. I will say though, like you
sound like an old guy punching at clouds right now. You're right.
I'll say this. So a movie like Minecraft kind of leans into that nostalgia ethos, right? Because movies like Battleship and Borderlands, or I should say, movies or TV shows that kind of cater to the Gen Z millennial crowd, they're very much contemporary. They're set in the present day, right? Like if you were to watch a show that had like, I don't know, let's just throw out a name like Jennifer Aniston, right? Well-known actress, big name in the Gen X community. The movies and TV shows that she's in, they're pretty much set, in the 20th or 21st century, right? Whereas a movie like this, I really couldn't tell, like if they're trying to like, let us know if it was set in the press, or if they're trying to like lean into like the 80s nostalgia, right? Because they kept going back and saying, back in '89 I was this and that, and the store that Garbage Man is running is very much in a time warp. It's very much stuck in the 80s, and even then, like
his character,
right? And even at the end of the movie, like everybody is dressed like it's like they're still living in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
So it's and we see this plenty with shows like Stranger Things, where most of the cast, well, I wouldn't say most, majority, but most of the cast are were born in the 21st century. So these are kids who have no living memory of living in the 80s or 90s like you and I did, but yet somehow they find it very appealing to kind of lean into that 80s nostalgia. So that was my takeaway from watching this movie, is the fact that this is very much speaking to a particular generation and catering to their aesthetic, just like Borderlands kind of catered to our humor and aesthetic, and how a movie like Battleship catered to the Gen Xers. That's pretty much the only intelligent thing I'm going to say in this review.
We're going to talk about. I think I'm probably going to spend a crazy amount of time at the beginning, which I know feels weird, but you will be helping me as we try to fix some stuff at the beginning, because I think that's where a lot of my talking points are. Because it's such a bizarre thing, because I look at what this film is, right? Like Minecraft, right? It's been around for quite some time, right? It's super popular, and this, like, it generally feels like this is created for a much younger audience,
right?
So it feels like that throughout, and it's so, like I said, just awkward with how they like go about starting the story. So like it starts off, right? You get to meet Steve, right? That's played by Jack Black, who he wanted to work in the mines, right? That was his vision, right? That's what his life goals are. So, kids want to be astronauts or firefighters. He wanted to work in the mines, right? So, I can't say a lot of kids probably aspire to that, but he's one of them, right? And, you see him, he grows up to be, kind of this disgruntled adult, and realizes like, hey, I could still live my dreams. So you're going to go down to the mines, and it kind of starts off with his discovery of what's called the Orb of Dominance, right? Now, did the Orb of Dominance, did it look familiar to you at all?
I mean, it has a very cube-like shape that we've seen in another franchise, 20-something years ago.
What, right? Like, okay, like it's literally, it looks like the same damn asset as the Tesseract, right? So it's like,
Well, we can't call it the Tesseract for copyright reasons. So
of course,
we'll just call it
Which is-
whatever the hell it's called.
bizarre, right? Because Minecraft is huge. It's like, why do you want to have, like, why do you want to like plug things in there from other very notable things? But it's just like, you're already a big enough IP. Just do your own stuff. But you need to have the Orb of Dominance, and then you need this thing called the Earth Crystal, and when you combine it creates this this portal to the overworld, right? To the Minecraft world. And that's how the movie starts. Very quickly gets us into Minecraft, and you kind of go through like a lot of the, I guess the big things that I think people know about Minecraft. And I'm not a huge fan of Minecraft. It's not because I think it's bad or anything like that. It just was never something I got into. So just, fair warning. There's a lot of things that I recognize just because Minecraft is such a big product. I think you kind of know it. But I don't really come from that, that knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to my point earlier, it's kind of a generational thing. Like, a game like Borderlands or Final Fantasy, would have a bigger appeal for us than Minecraft, which by comparison would seem ridiculously simple and not worth our time.
I'm curious about that because I think to a lot of other people that really got into Minecraft, and I don't know, I do feel like there's a huge audience that's in our age demographic that played it. I mean, Chris used to play this all the time, right? Now, I'm not saying that that's like uniquely, like, obviously my sample size is not very big for a few people, but I feel like there's absolutely a huge player base that's probably our age or maybe a little bit younger. So
and I should preface this. I mean, I'm not saying like it's only the younger generation who likes this, because obviously a lot of it appeals to a lot of people, appeals to people in our age group or people who are older. But for the most part, when you think of Minecraft or when you associate Minecraft, you usually associate with with a younger audience.
I don't know about that, but I will continue because I don't know how much.
I'm sticking to that position. All right.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Like I said, I don't have a good source for the demographic information. But yeah, I would agree with you. It's definitely, we would be the oldest of that. But yeah, I do imagine that there's quite a big younger audience, and I think about like Roblox and all that stuff too. But I digress. But yeah, so Steve brings us into the world of Minecraft, right? And we see like a lot of I would say the iconic things that I would think of when you think of Minecraft, as far as like the zombies, the night, and everything like that. And he sees we get to meet a good boy, right, Dennis, that is kind of his companion in this Minecraft world. So as he continues to kind of explore, right, eventually he finds this gateway into the Nether, right, which is I guess kind of like the underworld, so to see, and we get to meet the Piglin, who are our antagonists for this. So I guess the Piglin, they want the orb because, well, I guess the lead Piglin doesn't like creation or whatever. It's not a super critical thing for the story, because I don't think people are here for the story of Minecraft, but that's in essence what it is. So Steve and Dennis, the dog, get captured, and they're able to kind of break out of their cell, but unfortunately Steve doesn't make it out of the pit, but he sends Dennis, the dog, right, out into the real world. And this is kind of where my mind started to break, because I'm like, okay, like you're bringing this Minecraft character, right, which is very stylized, right? Like I'm sure almost anybody that's listening to this at least has like an idea of how Minecraft looks. Obviously very blockish in how everything is. So the whole time this is happening, I'm like, oh, like there's gonna be like some like wacky hijinks with the dog, or people are gonna like interact with, oh, look how weird that is. But guess what? We never actually. The dog just kind of like brings the orb to Steve's house because I guess he could just find a scent in the real world, whatever. Don't know how many like years he hasn't existed in reality, but sure, whatever. But I like how they never actually did anything with the dog. It was so bizarre to me. Like, why had the dog go into the real world and then never actually like utilize as a joke for anything? Super bizarre. We have a whole side plot with a teacher and like one of the villagers like getting close to having a romantic relationship, but them interacting with a dog clearly not important, right? So we have all this random exposition, right? This real, dump of everything, and then it almost feels like it doesn't start, right? And that to me was the weirdest thing. Like when you think of Minecraft, right? I'm thinking I'm going to spend most of my time in Minecraft, right? In that world. But instead of that, we spend the next 20 minutes getting to know all these other characters. And it was such a bizarre choice to me, right? Because you have Jack Black, right? And you have him, Steve, right? You have his character. And then we just kind of jump over to a random different set of characters that have no connection. They don't know each other or anything. And we just kind of move over to them. So we go from one narration to a entirely different narration where we get to meet Garbage Man, right? Played by Jason Momoa. I thought he was like Adam Sandler from Pixels, as being kind of this like, guy that's maybe not necessarily living in the past, but like, clearly is like a quote unquote big gamer. And that's what he's kind of noticed for. You kind of equated into something else. What did Garbage Man remind you of?
I was gonna say, like, the way he behaved and the way he kept talking about how he used to be the big champ. He kind of reminded me of Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite.
That's a great one. Yeah, that's a great reference. Yeah. So like he got a kind of this like weird amalgamation of a character. And not only does he like own this like old like I guess like gaming store, but he also dabbles in storage unit auctions. And like, did you ever like watch Storage Wars and all that stuff? Remember that was super popular in the early 2010s?
I mean, I vaguely remember it. I kind of stopped watching it after a while because it just got repetitive,
Sure. But like you remember that like being a big thing, right? Like that it had an absolutely huge peak. I remember that being so popular for a while, was all the auctions and everything like that. So like the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, God, has this movie like been like in production hell for like a decade where this is still a joke that they're using? Because I can only imagine the only reason you would want him to also be like a storage auction person is because it's popular. So I don't know. I kind of was like, I think someone probably left that in. It's been in there for so long.
I didn't realize that was still a thing, to be honest with you.
I didn't either. But I mean, sure enough, they're going to bring it up. So the only reason I can think of you're going to bring it up is because at the time it was something that people were thinking about or noticed. But yeah, so we have him and he's, kind of down on his luck. He ends up winning Steve's unit, right? Which includes the all-important Orb of Dominance, right? So after we get to see how pathetic, Garbage Man is, we transition over to these pair of kids, right? And I say kids when I really shouldn't be, because like we have Henry and Natalie, right? Who like within the first, I think like the first two sentences, they mention their mom's dead. With great exposition, right? With great writing, you're just going to have the characters blurt out really critical things. So they're talking about their deceased mom. And I don't know about you, did you think that Natalie looked like she was like 16? She did not look like an adult.
Yeah, there's something Dickensian about this, really. It's like you've got someone who, I mean, she looks like she's not even old enough to vote, and yet here she is, being a guardian. I will say this. The last time I saw that actress, she played Enid in and Wednesday.
Wednesday, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like when I saw her, I was like, is that Enid? Like,
Yeah.
like that's all I could think about.
And she is 23. The actress is 23, right? So I don't want to like. Could technically be like the Guardian, but I don't know. For me, like I kept looking at it, like, is this like a joke? Like, are you like purposely having these two kids like kind of coexist with each other, and we're just gonna pretend like it's normal for them to be living on their own?
I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not like with Five Nights at Freddy's where we clearly know John is the adult in the adult guardian in that family dynamic.
Yeah, that's true, right? I mean, some people just like look younger, so it's but it did just kind of make me like kind of throw me through a loop when I'm seeing everything play out, right? But yeah, so you have Henry and Natalie, right? The mom passed away, they're moving into a new house, and we also meet the realtor Dawn, right? Who has a mobile petting zoo.
I mean, so here's my thing. So were they just sitting in the writer's room, just saying, well, let's just think of some random crap to throw in there. Like, what's the most random thing that you can think of? Mobile animal zoo. Okay, yeah, we'll put that in the script. That's pretty random. People are gonna get thrown off by that.
It's like so bizarre, and like I don't know if they're just going for that, but it's just like. It's just so everything was so bizarre in the real world, right? I just got to refer to it real world versus Minecraft.
It's very disjointed. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it feels very weird. It's like I'm sure they're going for it intentionally, but then I also have to question what is the purpose of this, right? Because like you keep bringing in all these characters, and it just gets really convoluted, right? Because the whole, I guess the story kind of jumps off with you have Henry, right, who like goes into Garbage Man's shop the first day of school, as you would do, right? You would go to some random store prior to going into school. And he ends up, Henry goes into school and he creates a jetpack like you would do on your first day of school, right? So he creates a fully functional jetpack on his first day that I guess like the bullies they play or they mess around with it and it causes the jetpack to I don't know go do something else. It's all just totally bizarre of a way of kind of introducing all these characters together, and it was so weird for me just to see how everything was unraveled, because I'm like, is this a Minecraft movie or what is the purpose of all of this? Like, I think if you're going to see Minecraft, you just want to be able to experience the world, but instead like you spend so much time dealing with these characters that almost have no like actual purpose in the movie. Now I will say, right, I've been kind of giving it a hard time so far. There were a few lines that I laughed at, and I'm gonna get I want to see if you also chuckled at all with it. But there's the scene where Garbage Man, right? He picks up Henry and he meets Jennifer Coolidge, right? Who's the principal. And he says like, whoever divorced you made a huge mistake. I kind of laughed at that. I don't know if it was just like Stockholm syndrome or what, but like it was just everything was so absurd. I just kind of had a chuckle at that scene. The other scene that happened almost right afterwards was Natalie couldn't find where Henry was, so Dawn, the realtor, was like, "Hey, cool, let me see if I can find him." And she's like, "Oh, he's safe. He's just in an abandoned mine." And both those lines kind of made me laugh, and it was probably the only time I actually kind of laughed during the whole thing. But I don't know. Did the humor hit for you? I guess would be my question.
I guess like I mean, there's just so many elements of that about that movie that just made me sit there and scratch my head and wonder what the fuck am I watching here.
I know. I mean that absolutely happened, and I don't know if that's what got me just to laugh. It's just like I feel like I'm laughing because I don't know what else to do.
But here's the thing: like if you're gonna make something funny, I mean, try to make it relevant to the movie, right? It's just all the lines that are supposed to be funny. They've got nothing to do with the movie whatsoever.
Exactly.
It's kind of like the cutaway in Family Guy where where you're supposed to laugh at it because it's just disjointed, but it's got
Yes.
nothing to do with the plot. It's just there.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where I'm gonna put you on the spot, right? Because we're gonna talk through this because this beginning part drove me insane, right? So we've spent all this time, right? So we got the voiceover from Steve, we saw Minecraft, we were in and out of the world in 5 minutes, right? That's how quickly his thing happened, right? So for the next 20 minutes, we have the buildup of all these characters, right? We got Garbage Man, right? We got you got Henry and Natalie, the brother sister slash son mom surrogate thing, and then you have Don the realtor, right? So they all get sucked into the world of Minecraft, and the only thing I could think of is why, right? Why do this, right? Because we know how the rest of the movie goes, right? Now, of these 5 characters, right, we got Steve, Garbage Man, Henry, Natalie, and Dawn. How many of those characters would you actually even bother to bring into the story? For you, right? If you were writing Minecraft, right, and you're trying to tell a similar story, right, do you need all 5 of these characters?
I mean, really, I mean, if there is a particular character you would want to focus on, I imagine it would be Steve because
Right?
he's the one who's the most invested in it. Everybody else is just, I mean, and they make a point of trying to say we just want to get out of here, we just want to go home, whereas Steve's like the only guy who's like, I actually do want to save this place because I actually care about everything that I've built here over the past, I don't know what, 20 something years. I'm guessing he's been living in.
Yeah.
I mean, the only reason why you have Garbage Man in there is because, hey, if we get Jason Momoa in there, obviously they'll be the big draw, and if we have these 2 kids in there, hey, that hits our younger demographic, so kids will definitely love it because they're seeing a kid in that movie too. And then you've got Dawn there, Dawn the realtor, because for diversity, really.
It's totally bizarre. So, like, this is what I'm thinking, right? Like, when I'm thinking about the movie and how they kind of did this, right? To me, it all starts with, like, you have Steve, right? And I get that, hey, you want to, kind of bring in some other people into the role, right? You bring in, you got Henry, right? So he's kind of this kid that, clearly has this, like, kind of appetite for, like, learning, and, he's clearly very, like, cerebral. You see, like, he's able to build a jetpack in a day, right? So clearly it's a kid that has a great imagination that wants to do it. And then you kind of have Garbage Man, who I kind of look as kind of this, like, kind of weird father figure, this guy that's kind of down on his luck, but, looks at, this kid that doesn't, have a father figure that's there to kind of help out, right? So you kind of have these, like, maybe 3 characters, but then you have, like, Natalie and Dawn, who, for all intents and purposes, were totally useless to the story, right? Like, Natalie's whole thing is that she just wants to protect him as, like, a sister slash guardian. And Dawn, I just felt like she was there for the ride because she was just kind of dragged into it. And to me, it made it so lame, right? Because you don't need to have all these characters. And to me, it just kind of detracts from everything. You have a good, like, template for how to make these movies, right? You have Jumanji, right? To me, Jumanji did a great job of, like, you have these characters on the outside, you kind of see how they interact with each other, and then they all kind of get sucked into the world, and you see how they deal with everything, right? To me, that's an interesting way of doing things. In this, it just doesn't make any sense, because you have Steve, who none of these characters meet or have any knowledge of, right? It's not like he's connected to the story at all. He's just a guy that's there, and then these 4 randos just join the world. And I felt like that was just a huge missed opportunity, and I just don't get why you wasted so much time on the outside if you're just going to do what you did. And it just drove me absolutely insane. So I don't know about that, but that was my piece about it. I did not like how they wanted to bring all these characters together. I thought it was totally stupid and a waste of time.
I mean, well, you can say that about the movie itself.
I mean, that's true. That's true. But, I think you have a way, right, to create a fun story, right? Like, we've seen, like, loads of things now. I think the video game, like, kind of adaptation where everyone thinks it's going to suck it's not really a thing anymore, right? Like we've seen a lot of successful ones come out. Now, of course, there's still, with anything, there's still going to be some crap out there. But I think we've kind of moved away from that. But I feel like Minecraft, the movie, just kind of did everything that I just don't like to see a movie do, which is you just didn't really seem like you had a good mind for what you wanted to do, right? You just kind of want to throw in as many like kind of Easter eggs as possible. You wanted to talk about as much as you could, but you didn't really have a plan in mind for how it was going to work. Because you got like, and I guess we'll talk about the story, right? Which is not saying a whole lot. So the Piglin leader, who I don't even know, I forget the character's name, I don't even care, ends up like releasing Steve so Steve could go get the orb that's now returned to the world of Minecraft. So Steve goes out there and he's able to kind of save the group as they're, kind of dealing with the nighttime. So you see like the iconic zombies and everything like that I'm sure, if you played Minecraft at all, you're probably like, oh, look, it's the, zombies and everything like that. I did kind of get a little bit of a smirk. This was probably my favorite line from the whole thing was you had Dawn gave him the cube and was like, you have some like good Frodo vibes. I'm going to give this to you. I kind of laughed at that. I thought that was funny. That was probably the only thing that I definitely said like, oh, that was kind of amusing. And I'm glad I listened to that one line. But I will say the other thing too. So once we get Steve together with the group, I felt like Jack Black and Jason Momoa were having a competition to see who could be the most over the top. Like, it just felt like they were doing their own thing throughout the whole story. Like, I don't think they were written like that. They were just like, hey, this is a Minecraft movie. Let's just do some crazy shit. And I think they did that really well because both of them were totally over the top. Did you think of anything of their performances, or was it just like, it is what it is?
I mean, it was just a competition between two guys to see, who's the bigger alpha male. Who's got the it's kind of like it was. I mean, the back and forth. It was kind of like who's got the biggest dick around.
Yeah, that's true. Yep, that's true. They had this kind of like weird bromance, which kind of worked because it was about the only thing that kept me kind of engaged with anything that was happening. So they have the orb and they need to pick up a new sand crystal, right? And I'm just going to throw out all these stupid terms because it is what it is. But, they have to get this sand crystal, so they're going to go to some place called the Woodland Mansion in order to get to it. So they go to this kind of like nearby village to, get supplies, a map, and whatnot. And what ends up happening is like we start to, we see crafting for the first time. So obviously in something called Minecraft, you're going to be seeing some crafting. So they, I think this was probably the only time, I guess this and near the end was the only time we actually saw them crafting anything, but it is what it is. We see the village end up getting attacked by, these little piglin things. And we kind of see the characters kind of split up where the three male characters end up splitting up and going together. And the two female characters are kind of like off screen for like 30 minutes of the film, which makes me wonder once again why you bother to bring them into the world if they barely have any purpose in it. I will say, right, so the getaway from the village, right, you had Jack Black and Garbage Man in a very weird position, right? And I kind of put in the notes, it was just like, oh, cool. They split up and it looks like Steve and Garbage Man are 69ing each other in the sky.
They were really leaning into those jokes,
Yes, they were, right? Like, and I get that, that's probably like, a nice wink to the adults in the audience, right? Because I'm sure there's plenty of kids out there that are just like, oh, look, look at all these fun things. And then they just were like, hey, for the audience, we're just going to make this so over the top that we're just going to have them like literally sitting there in this awkward pose for this guy. So I give them props for wanting to do that. The three male group, right? The three male team members end up, taking a random side quest. I like how Steve just starts calling Garbage Man Gargar, which I'm assuming Jack Black probably just improvised. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to call him this anymore. I'm just going to call him Gargar. And they just kind of ran with it throughout the film. So, in any film, right, you have to have a totally pointless, like, kind of conflict here, because all of a sudden, like, Steve and, I'm sorry, not Steve, you have Henry and Gargar have this, like, argument because, Gargar is there for diamonds so he could get rich and whatnot. So they have this, like, kind of, like, totally pointless scene where they, get into this altercation. They eventually, make it to the mansion. There's a chicken jockey. That was a huge thing. Do you know what a chicken jockey is, Luca?
I imagine it's someone riding a chicken.
You would be correct, sir. So, and we see like the little zombie kid, which is what I'm going to describe him as. But I guess that's really big in the game. I did not know this, but everyone was like talking about chicken jockeys. So, hey, clearly that was super important. The male guys are able to find the sand crystal. They're able to kind of grab it. And as they're leaving, Gargar sacrifices himself to let the others escape. Because for a fact that Jason Momoa definitely killed himself or sacrificed himself and he's dead, right? Because there's no way he's going to show up later.
It's not like Kevin Hart, didn't do the same thing.
Yeah, like it was just like, come on, like it's the most like obvious thing that's going to happen. You're not fooling anybody. Like clearly he's going to be back. So,
well, I'll be honest with you. Like when that happened, I was like, oh, thank God he's out of the movie. We don't have to see him again.
Oh, geez, come on, man. Like him and Steve's interactions were the best interactions to me for the film, right? That was about the only thing that I was like watching. Like I can't wait.
You were really invested in this movie, Lee.
What?
It sounds like you're really, really invested in this movie.
I was more invested in how stupid the two of those, how stupid Jack Black and Jason Momoa could act together. That was about the only thing I was invested in. I was just like, okay, can I get more screen time with them? Because they're about the only thing that's salvaging this from being a total like dumpster fire.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the characters escape, they have the cube, but unfortunately the evil boss, the evil Piglin, takes the cube and she needs it to do something or other. So the characters, they all come together to get the cube back so they can leave. Gargar comes in and saves the day. And Steve is able to defeats the main Piglin lady, who has a lot of daggers on her. That kind of made me smirk a little bit. I was like, oh, cool. She's got like a whole bunch of daggers.
I thought it was just the one dagger, and she kept picking it up and trying again.
Oh, really? See, I actually thought that she just had multiple daggers on her, and she just kept pulling out more and more. So I guess, I'm not brave enough to go back and watch to see if I'm right or wrong because
you've already had to do it twice now.
Yes, I don't need to do it a third time. So I guess if you can leave in the comments section, just let me know, was it the same dagger or did she just keep like having more and more come out? Let us know so we don't have to watch it again.
I'm certainly not watching it again. That's for sure.
Yes, no, I'm not interested in it. So, but they save the day. They leave. Steve initially was thinking he would stay in the Minecraft world, but I guess Natalie was like, "Hey, you should bring that creativity to the real world." So then he's like, "You know what? Screw this. I am gonna go back to the real world." So then he returns and the movie ends. And that's that, right? It was a totally nothing burger of a film. There was some lines that I will admit made me laugh. But you brought up a very, very good point. And that's that none of the jokes actually had anything to do with Minecraft. Right? And that shouldn't be the case, right? Like you should be able to like look back at this and be like, hey, it was funny because you use elements of Minecraft to make this enjoyable. But that wasn't the case. Almost everything out there was it was either so absurd that I just kind of laughed at it because of how awkward it was, or it was just the two actors going back and forth trying to like show who was the toughest one, and that was it. And I'm like, God, like you created this movie, right? You have a super recognizable IP, and like you don't even really leverage it that well. I mean, the world was interesting to see. Like, I think they get the aesthetic very well. So like I appreciate that, but like the things I feel like you want to see in a Minecraft movie, it just felt like they had like little check boxes, and I was just like, okay, we have to have this enemy, we have to have this location, we have to have a crafting table, we have to have all this stuff. This is the most important thing, but then you just kind of fail and you don't even really do anything with it. And it was just a huge missed opportunity for me for this, which is not saying a lot because it's the Minecraft movie. I wasn't expecting much going into it, but I was definitely expecting more than what we got. So I'm just going to give it a score, right? Because I just don't feel like talking about it much more. I'm going to give it just a 2 out of 5. Or, you know what? I'm going to give it a 1.8 out of 5. Right? Let me not give it a 2 because I feel like that's giving it too much credit. The only thing that for me worked in this was the back and forth between Jack Black and Jason Momoa. That was it for me. It was just kind of ridiculous to see two guys trying to like out macho each other. But that was it. Everything else was just nothing. And it was just it's a shame that instead of using the IP to make something creative with it, ended up being like just two characters and Minecraft was thrown into it. I just think it was a missed opportunity, and I wish they did more with it. So, Luka, I guess you could take us out with your amazing thoughts on this amazing movie.
I'm just going to give it a 1 out of 5.
Oh my god. Damn, nothing.
Yep.
Damn. Damn, brutal. Well, but yeah, I mean, 1.8, 1 for Luka. So that's all I'm going to say about this. For the love of God, just if you're writing something like this, like, do a better job of getting us to what we want to see, right? 20 minutes of fluff was way too much, and it was like only like an hour and a half. Like, this was a super short film, which I'm going to be very grateful for, but geez, like, get us into the world of Minecraft a lot sooner, a lot more. So, but thank you for everybody that managed to listen to us sit here and ramble on and on about a stupid film like this. And make sure, like, comment, subscribe, click on all the buttons that make us more popular. And I guess we will see you in the future.